Hi guys, my name is Valerie and I'm a real Prague guide. We tried to run away from this topic, but it was following us literally like in the movie Jaws. So I hope you got the reference in the beginning. Today we're gonna talk about 10 untrue facts about Prague in Czech Republic. But first, let me explain something. If you spend a lot of time in the city center, you always hear these fascinating stories about the city and Czech history, and some of them are really interesting, and others are just big load of smelly to be honest. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about 10 stories or facts about Prague and Czech Republic that have been off for years, that I keep hearing people saying, and I just want to make it stop. Just to be clear, we are not making this video to make fun of these people who really believe in these stories, because there's nothing funny about it, it's just sad. We are doing it only for entertainment purposes, because we think some of you guys might have heard these stories as well in the past and thought, is that really true? So let's go to our first location, which is going to be the Old Town Square, of course. Our first untrue fact is going to be about this church. It's called the Church of Our Lady before Tyn, and it's the tallest building on the Old Town Square. Everyone notices that one, but one thing that a lot of people don't notice is the fact that the church is asymmetrical. Take a look. One tower is thicker and a little bit taller than the other. Which one is that? Of course, it's the right one. I'm sure those of you who live in Prague or who have traveled here before already know the story that the right tower, the thicker tower, is representing Adam, and the left tower is representing Eve. It's kind of a tradition that we have here in Prague and in many other European cities. For example, in the Prague Castle, there is a basilica called the Basilica of St. George, where we have the same looking towers. And that one is even older than the Tyn Church on the Old Town Square. But let's go back there. So the first untrue fact about the Tyn Church is just something that people confuse. They think that the left tower is Adam and the right tower is Eve. We tried to find out what would be the basis of it, and we really couldn't. A lot of people would just say that Adam is a gentleman, so he gave Eve a bigger tower. But I'm sorry, chivalry is dead, and it's just a tradition that we have here in this city. The second false fact about the Tyn Church is also about its towers. This time, it's a legend. According to this legend, the towers of the Tyn Church were built by two brothers. When one brother realized that his sibling's tower is going to surpass his in size, he decided to kill him and later committed suicide by jumping from one of these towers down. Well, that actually kind of sounds plausible and even familiar, because this story does exist. But in Poland, yes, if you go to Krakow on one of the main squares, you will find a church, I think it's called St. Mary's Church, and that's the legend from there, not from Prague. But I've heard so many other Prague tour guides telling this story in connection with the Tyn Church that we just had to include it here. But let's leave the poor Tyn Church and go to its neighbor, the Old Town Hall. It is one of the most recognizable buildings in Prague. That's where astronomical clock is located. But did you know that the Old Town Hall used to be bigger than it is right now? Take a look at this. This whole wing of the Old Town Hall is missing nowadays. Instead of that one, we have trees. Why? Well, that's about our third untrue fact. Some people say that the wing of the Old Town Hall was destroyed during the tactical bombing done by American air forces during Second World War. Actually, there were bombings in Prague, and most of them were done by American air forces, but they did not happen on the Old Town Square, for sure. The wing of the Old Town Hall burned down during Czech national uprising against Nazi Germany in the end of the Second World War. That's why it's not there. They planted trees instead, so that's the look of the Old Town Hall today. But the confusion about the Old Town Hall doesn't stop there. Also, a lot of people believe that the first Prague defenestration, the act of throwing somebody out of the window, also happened in the Old Town Hall, and that is simply false. It happened in the New Town Hall. You can kind of see why a lot of people confuse these two, right? But let's abandon the busy Old Town Square for now and go somewhere a little bit quieter, to the Jewish quarter. We are now in the Jewish quarter, next to the old Jewish cemetery. This cemetery was opened in the 15th century and was active for 300 years. Because the Jewish quarter was separated from the rest of the old town, the cemetery also had to expand, but somehow differently. So here we actually have one of the tallest part of the cemetery, where we have layers of bodies buried. According to the Jewish traditions, you are not allowed to rebury people. So the only way for Jewish people to do that was to bury people in layers. That's why some parts of that cemetery are so tall. So our next untrue fact is about how many people are actually buried on that cemetery. And the answer is, we don't know. Because again, we are not allowed to dig in. But a lot of people will just make up a certain number. So every time I hear somebody saying there are 124,063 people buried on that cemetery, I just want to stop and ask them, how do you know, man? Did you go there at night with a shovel, dig everybody out, counted them and buried them again? How do you know? Yes, they tried in the past to count the tombstones. They did. There were 12,000 of them. But again, the estimate for the people buried on the old Jewish cemetery can be 40,000. It can be 100,000. Who knows? Our next fact is going to be about Second World War. A lot of people, when they arrive to Prague, they look around, they see that the city is in a pretty good condition. And the natural question is, was Prague destroyed during Second World War? And then I guess when you don't know the true answer to that question, you start just making things up right there. And there was a legend born this way, that Adolf Hitler loved Prague so much that he decided not to destroy it. But for me, it is not a legend, it's again just some bullshit. Because Adolf Hitler didn't destroy Prague because he didn't need to. Because of the Munich Agreement, he was just able to walk inside of the city and take it as if it was already his. Cities were destroyed during the wars not because they were ugly or pretty, it was because they needed to be taken, because there was some resistance hiding in the buildings, or there was a fight. Okay, we're now leaving Old Town in the Jewish quarter and going to where it all started, to the Prague Castle. A lot of people, when they arrive here, notice this flag. It's called Presidential Standard. It's very pretty. Let's take a look at it. We have the Czech coat of arms, we have the leaves of the national tree, linden tree, and we also have Czech national motto, Truth Prevails, which is actually quite fitting for this video today. So that's our next untrue fact. A lot of people think that when this flag is up, that the president is in the castle. And it is not true. When this flag is up, it means that the president is fulfilling his presidential duties in the Czech Republic. Every time you don't see this flag up there, it means that the president is currently somewhere else. Also, a lot of people think that the president actually lives in the castle palaces, but no, he only goes here to work. If we look at the opposite side from the flag on the second courtyard, we will find this part of the building. This is where the Spanish Hall and Rudolph's Gallery are located. Rudolph's Gallery is named after Rudolf II, one eccentric Czech king and Bohemian emperor who slept in one bed with a lion, partied a lot, invited astronomers and astrologers to Prague, and also collected art. Rudolf II was a passionate collector of art, but nowadays we won't find it in any of these galleries. Why? And that's our next false fact. I've personally heard some guys saying that this art collection of Rudolf II was stolen by the USSR soldiers, and in some case I also heard them saying Nazi soldiers. Well, actually somebody got there first. It was the Swedish army. It of course was during the 30 Years' War. During the last stages of the war, Prague was attacked by the Swedish army and the Prague Castle was taken. They couldn't cross Charles Bridge, and eventually that's where the battle ended with Praguers winning it, but they did steal big portion of that Rudolf's art collection. So if you want to see any of that, you have to go to Sweden. One of the bigger pieces that they stole was something called the Devil's Bible, famous for its depiction of the devil inside. This fact we actually found through a news article. A lot of people would say that communism in this country ended because of famine, that people were protesting on the streets because they had nothing to eat. And for these people, I just have two words: Velvet Revolution. A series of peaceful protests that started just 8 days after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And our very last 10th fact is about the Velvet Revolution itself. As we know, it happened in many places, in many cities, towns, and of course in many places in Prague. But Wenceslas Square is kind of iconic. We have a lot of historical photos from that event, and on them we can clearly see that Vaclav Havel, the last president of Czechoslovakia and the first president of Czech Republic, was giving his famous speech on the balcony of the Melantrich house. But a lot of people say that Vaclav Havel was standing on the staircase of the National Museum, because it would just be so much cooler if he did, right? Alright, here you have it, guys. 10 untrue, false, far-fetched facts about Prague and Czech history. We didn't even include some of the smaller, silly facts, like people calling the river in Prague Danube, or saying that the statue of Jan Hus on the Old Town Square is Charles IV, or saying that the gargoyles on the St. Vitus Cathedral represent gods. We also have to say that unfortunately we heard a lot of these facts from other guides in Prague. We are of course not going to be naming names, but I'm sure they know who they are if they're watching this video. And we think it usually happens because people just don't know. Maybe they started working recently and they didn't get this out of their system yet, or maybe it's because some of these stories actually sound pretty good and interesting. For example, our most favorite story is actually fictional. It's taken from the book, and it describes the story of a real historical figure, Reinhard Heydrich, and how he ordered his soldiers to remove a statue of a Jewish composer, Mendelssohn, from the top of the Rudolfinum concert hall. The soldiers went to the roof and they discovered that none of the statues there actually have names written on them, so they had to find and determine who is that Jewish composer themselves. And of course, in their true fashion, they picked composer with the longest nose. They pushed the statue down and it broke, but then they discovered that it was actually Wagner. All we are trying to say is that it's normal to make mistakes. It happens to everybody. We just wanted to share with you guys some of the funniest stories that we heard in the past. If you like them, please give this video a thumbs up and we'll see you in our next one. Bye!
Wow.